I found my 8-year-old daughter, Zara, locked alone in a hotel room, crying and terrified, while my parents and sister were at the pool. When I discovered why they did it, I realized my own family had been using my child as a weapon against me. What happened next changed everything. The keycard to room 847 at the Sunset Bay Resort in Clearwater wouldn't work. I slid it through the reader once, twice, 3 times. Each failed attempt sent a spike of anxiety through my chest that I couldn't quite explain. The little red light blinked at me mockingly while the Florida humidity pressed against my back like a wet blanket, making my blouse stick uncomfortably to my skin. Something was wrong. I knew it the way you know rain is coming, that heavy feeling in the air, that electrical charge that makes your skin prickle and your hair stand on end. My daughter Zara was supposed to be with my parents and my sister Melody at the resort pool. I'd left them there an hour ago to take an important work call from my boss back in Atlanta. When I'd kissed Zara goodbye, she'd been splashing happily in the shallow end, my mother Diane holding her hands as she practiced floating, her little pink and purple striped swimsuit bright against the crystal blue water. "Just 1 hour, sweetie," I'd told her, crouching down at the pool's edge. "Mommy has to take this work call, but Grandma and Aunt Melody will take good care of you. We'll get ice cream after, okay?" Zara had nodded enthusiastically, water droplets sparkling on her dark eyelashes. "Can we get the kind with the gummy bears in it?" "Absolutely," I'd promised, and the smile that lit up her face had made my heart squeeze with that fierce, protective love that still surprised me sometimes with its intensity. Now, standing in this carpeted hallway that smelled like industrial cleaning products and someone's leftover Chinese takeout, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd made a terrible mistake. The work call had gone longer than expected. My boss Rebecca had wanted to discuss the Henderson account, the one I'd been managing remotely, even though I was supposed to be on vacation. As a senior marketing coordinator at Pinnacle Solutions, I was used to working odd hours. But taking work calls during my daughter's first real vacation since the divorce felt like a betrayal of everything I'd promised her about this trip. The divorce from Zara's father, Marcus, had been finalized 6 months ago, and it hadn't been pretty. He'd fought me for custody, claiming I was too career-focused to be a good mother, too selfish to put Zara's needs first. The irony wasn't lost on me. That here I was, proving his point by taking work calls on vacation. But I needed this job. As a newly single mother, I couldn't afford to seem unreliable or uncommitted, not when I had a mortgage and daycare costs and all the million little expenses that came with raising a child alone. That's why this trip was so important. My parents had offered to pay for it, said they wanted to help create some positive memories for Zara during this difficult transition. "She needs to know that she's loved," my mother had said when she'd called to suggest the vacation. "She needs to know that the divorce doesn't change how much her family cares about her." It had seemed like a gift from heaven, a chance for Zara to feel surrounded by love, to forget for a few days about the tension and sadness that had colored our house for months. My sister Melody had driven down from Jacksonville to join us, making it a proper family reunion. 3 generations of strong women, I'd thought, looking forward to creating new traditions now that it was just Zara and me. I should have known better. The hallway was too quiet. Not resort quiet, where you hear the distant hum of air conditioning and muffled conversations from other rooms, the occasional laugh from the pool area below, the soft ding of elevators. This was the kind of quiet that makes your skin crawl, the kind that screams that something is very, very wrong. It was the kind of quiet that reminded me of the night I'd found Marcus cheating, when the house had felt too still, too empty, like all the life had been sucked out of it. I tried the keycard again, pressing it firmly against the reader and holding it there for a few extra seconds like the desk clerk had shown me when we checked in. Still nothing, just that mocking red light and the soft beep that meant access denied. "Come on," I muttered, checking my phone. No missed calls, no texts, just the time, 4:47 p.m. I'd been gone exactly an hour and 12 minutes. The work call had won 40 minutes, and then I'd stopped by the gift shop to buy Zara a new coloring book, the kind with the holographic stickers she loved. I wanted to surprise her, to make up for having to leave her at the pool. My hands were starting to shake as I headed towards the elevator, planning to go down to the pool to find them. Maybe Zara had gotten tired. She'd been up since 6 that morning, too excited for the vacation to sleep in. Maybe they'd taken her back to the room for a nap. Maybe my mother had forgotten which room was ours. She'd been doing that more often lately. Small memory lapses that we all pretended not to notice. Last month, she'd called me 3 times in one day asking what time Thanksgiving dinner was, even though we'd had the same tradition for 20 years. But as I pressed the elevator button, listening to the mechanical whir of the machinery behind the walls, I heard it. Faint, muffled, but unmistakable. Crying. A child crying. Not the frustrated wailing of a toddler having a meltdown, or the dramatic sobbing of a kid who'd been told they couldn't have candy. This was different. This was the kind of crying that comes from real fear, real distress. The kind of crying that every mother's heart is wired to respond to with immediate, overwhelming panic. My blood turned to ice water. I pressed my ear against the door of room 847, my cheek flat against the cool wood, and my worst fears were confirmed. That was my daughter's voice, thin and desperate, coming from inside the room I couldn't get into. "Zara?" I called through the door, trying to keep my voice calm even though my heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it might break free. "Baby, are you in there?" The crying stopped abruptly, replaced by a small, shaky voice that broke my heart into 1,000 jagged pieces. "Mommy? Mommy, I can't get out. The door won't open." I pressed both hands against the door, as if I could somehow reach through the wood and pull her to safety. "I'm here, baby. I'm right here. Can you tell me what happened?" "I tried to open the door, but it won't work. I'm scared, Mommy. What if there's a fire? What if something bad happens and I can't get out?" The rational part of my brain, the part that had gotten me through business school and a difficult marriage and a contentious divorce, was trying to make sense of the situation. Maybe the door had malfunctioned. Maybe the electronic lock had glitched. Maybe this was just a mechanical failure, unfortunate timing, an innocent mistake. But the mother part of my brain, the part that knew my daughter's every expression and could read her moods like weather patterns, was screaming that this was wrong, all wrong. I don't remember running to the elevator. I don't remember jabbing the button repeatedly or pacing in the small carpeted space as it descended. I don't remember the conversation with the desk clerk, a young woman with perfect makeup and a name tag that read Jasmine, who looked alarmed when I explained the situation. I only remember fragments. The sound of Zara's voice scared and confused, the way my vision tunneled until all I could see was the red carpet beneath my feet and the shaking of my own hands, the taste of copper in my mouth as I bit my tongue to keep from screaming. The next thing I knew, I was back in the hallway with Marcus. Not my ex-husband Marcus, but Marcus, the hotel maintenance manager, a kind-faced black man in his 50s who moved with the efficiency of someone who dealt with locked-out guests 1,000 times before. He wore a navy blue uniform with Sunset Bay Resort embroidered in gold thread, and his hands were steady as he pulled out his master key. "Sometimes these key cards get demagnetized," he was saying as we walked quickly down the hallway. "Happens all the time, especially if you keep your phone too close to the card or if you put it near a magnetic clasp on a purse. Usually it's no big deal, but with a child inside." He shook his head. "We'll get this sorted out right away, ma'am." "She's 8, I said, my voice coming out higher than normal. "She's only 8 years old." "I understand," Marcus said, and something in his tone told me he really did. "I've got grandkids myself. Let's get this door open." The lock clicked open with a sound that was both relief and condemnation. Marcus stepped aside, his expression grave. "What I saw when I opened that door will haunt me for the rest of my life." My daughter was sitting on the bathroom floor, knees pulled to her chest, her little body shaking with silent sobs. Her swimsuit was still damp from the pool, and there were wet footprints leading from the door to where she sat, like breadcrumbs marking the path of her distress. Her hair, which my mother had braided that morning with such care, weaving in the small pink ribbon Zara had chosen, was coming undone, wisps of dark brown curls sticking to her tear-stained cheeks. But it wasn't just that she was upset. It wasn't just that she was alone. It was the way she looked at me when I came in, like she'd been abandoned, like she thought I might not come back, like she'd learned in the space of an hour that the adults she trusted could simply disappear and leave her trapped and alone.
It was the look of a child whose faith in the world had been fundamentally shaken. "Zara, oh my God, baby!" I rushed to her, dropping to my knees on the cold bathroom tile, my dress pooling around me as I gathered her into my arms. She threw her arms around my neck so hard it nearly knocked me over, her small body trembling against mine like a leaf in a storm. "Mommy, they left me here," she whispered into my shoulder, her voice muffled against my blouse. "They said I was being punished, and they left me here, and I couldn't get out. I tried to open the door, but it wouldn't work. I'm scared, Mommy. What if there's a fire? What if something bad happens and I can't get out?" The words hit me like physical blows, each one landing in my chest with the force of a sledgehammer. Punished. They had punished my 8-year-old daughter by locking her alone in a hotel room. My parents, my sister, the people I'd trusted with the most precious thing in my life. "What do you mean punished, sweetheart?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady even though rage was building in my chest like a wildfire, consuming everything in its path. "What did you do?"
Zara pulled back to look at me, her green eyes, so much like my own, wide and confused. "I don't know, Mommy. I asked if we could go back to the room to get my goggles because I wanted to try swimming underwater like the big kids, and Grandma got really mad. She said I was being difficult and that you spoil me too much and that I needed to learn a lesson about being grateful." My hands were shaking as I smoothed her damp hair away from her face, trying to process what she was telling me. My mother had gotten angry because Zara had asked for her goggles? Because my 8-year-old daughter had wanted to try swimming underwater? What happened then, baby? Aunt Melody brought me up here, and she used the keycard to let us in. She told me to sit on the bed and think about what I'd done wrong. I tried to tell her I didn't know what I did wrong, but she said that was part of the problem, that I don't listen and I don't appreciate what people do for me. Zara's voice was getting smaller with each word, shrinking in on itself like she was trying to disappear. Then she left, and I heard the lock click, and when I tried to open the door, it wouldn't work. I knocked and knocked, but nobody came. I was scared, Mommy. What if there was a fire? What if something bad happened and I couldn't get out? The maintenance manager, Marcus, was still standing in the doorway, his face grave. I could see him taking in the scene. The wet swimsuit, the terrified child, the mother barely containing her fury. His expression told me he'd understood exactly what had happened here, and it wasn't a mechanical malfunction. "Ma'am," he said quietly, stepping closer, but keeping his voice low so Zara couldn't hear. "The deadbolt was engaged from the outside. Someone locked this door with a key from the hallway. The electronic lock was working fine, but the manual deadbolt was turned. Your daughter couldn't have gotten out even if she'd had a keycard." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. They hadn't just left her alone. They had deliberately trapped her in this room. My own family had locked my 8-year-old daughter in a hotel room like she was a prisoner, like she was a criminal who needed to be contained. "How long?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Marcus checked his watch, his movements careful and professional. "Well, you called down to the desk about 20 minutes ago, and you said you'd been trying to get in for a while before that." "An hour and 15 minutes, I said, the timeline crystallizing in my mind with horrible clarity. "I left them at the pool at 3:30. It's almost 5 now." An hour and 15 minutes. My daughter had been trapped alone in this room for over an hour, not knowing if anyone was coming back for her, not understanding what she'd done wrong, scared and confused and abandoned by the people who were supposed to protect her. While I was on a work call, discussing marketing strategies and quarterly projections, my child was sitting on this bathroom floor, crying and afraid. The rage that had been building in my chest erupted into something white-hot and consuming, a fury so pure and absolute that it threatened to consume everything in its path. But I couldn't let Zara see it. I couldn't let her know that the adults she'd trusted had betrayed that trust in the most fundamental way possible. She was already scared enough. "It's okay, baby," I whispered, holding her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair, sunshine and chlorine and the strawberry shampoo she insisted on using. You didn't do anything wrong, you hear me? You didn't do anything wrong at all. But even as I said the words, my mind was racing. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was deliberate, calculated. My mother, my father, and my sister had discussed this. They had planned this. They had decided that my 8-year-old daughter deserved to be locked alone in a hotel room as punishment for the crime of asking for her goggles. And suddenly everything made sense. All the little comments over the past year since my divorce from Zara's father. All the passive-aggressive remarks about my parenting. All the times they'd undermined my authority or criticized my decisions. The way my mother had sighed when I'd said no to Zara having a second piece of cake at her birthday party. The way my sister had rolled her eyes when I'd insisted on sunscreen before pool time. The way my father had muttered about helicopter parenting when I'd asked them to text me if they took Zara anywhere. This wasn't about discipline. This was about control. This was about showing me that they knew better, that they could parent my child better than I could. This was about punishing me for being too protective, too careful, too concerned with my child's emotional well-being. This was about punishing me for refusing to parent the way that they had parented me. "Mommy," Zara said, pulling back to look at me again, her small hands framing my face. "Are Grandma and Grandpa and Aunt Melody mad at me?" I looked into my daughter's face, this beautiful, innocent child who had done nothing wrong except exist in the middle of a family war I didn't even realize was being fought, and I made a decision that would change everything. "No, sweetheart," I said, my voice steady now, filled with a certainty that surprised me. "They're not mad at you, but we're not going to worry about that anymore, okay? We're going to pack our things, and we're going to go somewhere else. Just you and me. Are we going home?"
I thought about our small apartment back in Atlanta, about the life we'd been building since the divorce, about all the ways my family had made me doubt myself as a mother over the past year, about all the times I'd accepted their criticism because I thought they were trying to help, about all the times I'd let them cross boundaries because they were family and family was supposed to matter. About all the times I'd put their feelings before my daughter's well-being because I was afraid of being alone, afraid of being the bad guy, afraid of admitting that the people who raised me might not have my child's best interests at heart. "No, baby," I said, standing up and taking her hand. "We're going to stay in Florida for the rest of our vacation, but we're going to do it without them." 3 days earlier, everything had seemed perfect. Almost too perfect, if I'm being honest. But I was so desperate for things to go right that I ignored the little voice in my head that whispered warnings. I was standing in my kitchen in Atlanta, folding tiny swimsuits and packing sunscreen into Zara's purple suitcase when my phone rang. It was my mother, Diane, calling from her house in Pensacola. "Natalie, darling, I've been thinking about our Florida trip," she said, her voice bright with that particular enthusiasm she got when she had plans. "You know, Melody could drive down from Jacksonville, and we could make it a real family vacation. Wouldn't that be wonderful?" At the time, it had seemed like a gift. My sister Melody and I had grown up close, but life had pulled us in different directions. She was a travel nurse, always moving from one assignment to another, and with my divorce proceedings and single motherhood, we barely talked anymore, except for quick texts on birthdays and holidays. "That sounds amazing, Mom," I'd said, watching Zara dance around the living room in excitement. She'd been packed for 2 days already, checking and rechecking her suitcase, making lists of all the things we were going to do. "Zara would love to see Aunt Melody." "Perfect! And honey, I know money's been tight since the divorce. Your father and I want to cover the hotel. Consider it our treat." I should have questioned it then. My parents weren't usually so generous, especially not without strings attached. But I was still raw from the divorce, still figuring out how to manage everything on my own, and the offer felt like a lifeline. The divorce from Marcus had been brutal, not just emotionally, but financially. He'd fought me on everything: custody, alimony, even who got to keep the coffee maker we'd gotten as a wedding gift. His lawyer had painted me as an absent, career-obsessed mother who put work before family. The irony was that I had scaled back my hours at Pinnacle Solutions specifically to spend more time with Zara, but somehow that had been twisted into evidence that I wasn't committed to my career either. "You can't have it both ways, Natalie," Marcus had said during one of our final mediation sessions. "You can't be the perfect mother and the perfect employee. Something's got to give." He wasn't wrong, but he also wasn't helping. After 6 years of marriage, I'd expected him to understand the impossible balance I was trying to maintain. Instead, he'd used it against me. So when my parents offered to pay for a vacation, when they offered to help create positive memories for Zara during this difficult transition, it felt like exactly what we needed. A chance to prove that our little family of two could be happy, that we could create new traditions, that love didn't require a perfect nuclear family structure. I'd spent weeks planning every detail. I'd researched the best family-friendly restaurants in Clearwater, printed out maps of the area, even made a detailed itinerary with backup indoor activities in case it rained. I wanted everything to be perfect for Zara. The night before we left, I'd tucked her into bed and found her clutching her stuffed dolphin, Mr. Bubbles, the one she'd gotten at the aquarium for her 7th birthday. "Mommy," she whispered in the dark, "do you think Grandma and Grandpa will like spending time with us?" The question had caught me off guard. "Of course, baby. Why would you ask that?" "Sometimes when they visit, they seem tired, like we're too much work." I smoothed her hair and kissed her forehead, my heart aching at the perceptiveness of children. "They love you very much, Zara. This vacation is going to be wonderful." But now, thinking back on that conversation, I realized Zara had been picking up on something I'd been too hopeful to see. The way my mother's smiles sometimes seemed forced when Zara got excited about something, the way my father would retreat to his phone when Zara wanted to show him a drawing or tell him a story. The way they both seemed to view Zara's natural 8-year-old energy as something that needed to be managed rather than celebrated. The morning of our departure had been chaos in the best way. Zara had woken up at dawn, too excited to sleep, bouncing on my bed and chattering about all the things we were going to do. We'd driven the 4 hours to Clearwater with music playing and windows down, Zara singing along to her favorite songs, when I felt something like hope blooming in my chest. The Sunset Bay Resort was everything the website had promised. Clean, modern, with a gorgeous pool area and direct beach access. When we'd checked in, the desk clerk, the same Jasmine who had later helped me get back into our room, had given Zara a welcome packet with stickers and a coloring book.
"First time in Florida?" Jasmine had asked, and when Zara nodded enthusiastically, she'd added, "Well, you picked the perfect place. The dolphins swim right by our beach in the mornings." My parents had arrived an hour after us, pulling up in their white Cadillac with enough luggage for a month-long trip. My mother had swept Zara into a hug that seemed genuine, exclaiming over how much she'd grown, while my father had handled the logistics of getting everyone checked in and settled. "This is going to be so good for all of us," my mother had said as we stood in the lobby, watching Zara explore the gift shop with wide eyes. Family time, real quality time. Melody had arrived that evening, driving down from Jacksonville after finishing a shift at the hospital where she was currently assigned. She'd looked tired but happy, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun, still wearing scrubs under her cardigan. "There's my favorite niece," she'd called out when she saw Zara, who had run to her with squeals of delight. Melody had always been the fun aunt, the one who remembered birthdays and sent silly postcards from whatever city she was working in. That first night, we'd all gone to dinner at a seafood restaurant on the beach. Zara had been on her best behavior, politely ordering chicken tenders when she'd really wanted the lobster mac and cheese, saying please and thank you and using her napkin without being reminded. I'd felt proud and hopeful watching my family interact with my daughter, seeing the possibility of real connection. "She's such a good girl," my mother had said, squeezing Zara's hand across the table. "So well-mannered. You're doing a wonderful job with her, Natalie." The compliment had warmed me more than it should have. I realized I'd been hungry for that approval, desperate to prove that I was managing motherhood well despite the divorce, despite being on my own. But now,
Holding my traumatized daughter in a hotel bathroom, I understood that the compliments had come with conditions. Zara was good when she was quiet, when she was compliant, when she didn't ask for things or express preferences or act like the 8-year-old child she was. The moment she'd stepped outside those narrow boundaries, she'd become a problem to be solved. And I'd been too grateful, too hopeful, too desperate for family support to see the trap being set.